Hey everyone, and welcome to The Explainer. Today we're unpacking a really fascinating interview with mathematician and causal AI scientist Zabo. If you've been feeling like the whole AI hype train is just moving at a million miles an hour, well, you're definitely not alone. But here's the hook. According to Zabo, the current model of AI, it's actually hitting its absolute limits. Because of some really deep foundational flaws in how these systems were built, we're basically speeding toward a massive industry contraction. But hey, don't panic. As we're going to see today, as AI completely floods the market with, well, just average content, true, authentic human creativity is about to become incredibly rare and highly, highly valuable. Okay, let's dive right into this. Here's our roadmap for today. First, we'll look at the AI scaling illusion. Second, how computers broke math. Third, the 60% collapse. Fourth, the global South mismatch. Fifth, the rare human premium. And finally, becoming anti-fragile. So starting us off, Section 1, the AI scaling illusion. For the last few years, the whole Silicon Valley mindset has just assumed that, bigger is always better, more data, more computing power. But that model has pretty much hit a plateau. Right now, our most famous AI systems rely on deep learning, which, at its core, is fundamentally just correlation at scale. It just matches patterns. Causal AI, on the other hand, actually understands cause and effect, and this brilliantly illustrates the difference. Zabo uses this perfect analogy of an Apple Watch. So your Apple Watch tracks your data, right? Your steps, your distance, but the watch itself doesn't actually understand the physical, mechanical process of walking. It doesn't know a thing about gravity or the friction of putting one leg in front of the other. It just tracks the byproduct of the activity. And honestly, current AI is just like that. It analyzes billions of data points, sure, but it completely lacks a fundamental mechanical understanding of how that data was actually generated in the first place. To really drive this home, Zabo references Plato's allegory of the cave. Imagine prisoners chained inside a dark cave their entire lives, right? Only able to stare at a blank wall. People behind them walk past a fire carrying objects, and the prisoners just see the shadows of, say, a tree or a car on that wall. They might come up with a brilliant, totally coherent way to describe those shadows, but they have never actually seen a real tree or a real car. This is exactly what our large language models are doing today. They've scraped the entire internet and literally ingested human knowledge, but they are just looking at the shadows of our reality. They are not in the real world, and because of that, they don't truly comprehend it. Which brings us to Section 2, how computers broke math. Okay, so the technical choices of the past are literally haunting the AI of the present. Decades ago, early computer scientists faced this massive problem. True mathematics, based on the axioms of arithmetic, requires absolute, perfect precision. Numbers like pi have infinite decimal points. But calculating infinite decimals, that requires massive, incredibly expensive computing resources. So to make computers faster and more scalable, they made a really tough choice. They sacrificed pure accuracy for speed. They relied on rounding off and approximations. They essentially broke the fundamental laws of math for the sake of performance. And wild enough, we are still doing this today. Zaba points out that Elon Musk is actually using integer math for his AI, Grok, basically removing decimal places entirely just to save electricity and increase speed. It's a very intentional trade-off, choosing speed over pure accuracy. So what does this actually mean for us? What's the consequence of this compromised math? Well, it's the literal root of AI hallucinations. Because these foundational rounding errors exist so deep inside the architecture, if you ask ChatGPT the exact same question 10 times, you are going to get 10 completely different answers. They might be close, they might have the same general vibe or semantic meaning, but technically, they are different. The system simply lacks mathematical consistency. Let's move on to Section 3, the 60% collapse. Now, you might be wondering, why does this matter to you and me? Well, we're shifting from the computer science theory to a brutal real-world economic collision. During his interview, Zabo made this incredibly stark back-of-the-envelope calculation. He predicts that 60% of the current creative and agency industry GDP is simply going to vanish. 60%. And honestly, he believes he's being conservative. Brands and CMOs are already looking to cut costs, and their logic is pretty straightforward. If all these AI tools are trained on the exact same data, we're all basically drinking from the same well. So why pay an external agency big bucks when we can just bring that average commoditized AI work in-house and save a fortune? In this massive collapse, it's being supercharged by something called cognitive offloading. Basically, we're getting lazy. Even really smart people are outsourcing their core thinking to chatbots. But remember Plato's cave from earlier? AI outputs are just an average of harvested human knowledge.
It just produces a massive sea of average, indistinguishable work. AI cannot possess human empathy. It literally has no ethics, and it absolutely cannot read between the lines of a messy client brief. If your job relies solely on, doing standard workflows and generating average copy or images that a chatbot can do, well, you are sitting right in the middle of that disappearing 60%.
Next up is Section 4, the Global South Mismatch. Before we look at how to actually survive this collapse, we really need to address a massive geographical contradiction. Current AI models were built by and optimized for Silicon Valley and the developed Northern Hemisphere. In those regions, they have aging populations and severe labor shortages. So automating jobs, that's actually a great thing. It fills a really necessary gap. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is what happens when you look at the global south, like Africa. They have a booming youth population. Zabo notes that in a country like Cameroon, the average age is around 17. Their primary crisis is high unemployment. So introducing hyper-efficient automation into that specific environment doesn't solve a problem, it actively makes joblessness worse. We're essentially forcing a solution designed for a labor shortage onto a population that is absolutely desperate for job creation. All right, let's pivot to some good news in Section 5, the rare human premium. So, with an industry collapsing and these huge geographical mismatches, where exactly is the good news here? Well, it comes down to basic economics, supply and demand. Right now, there is more AI-generated information flooding the internet than everything produced before 2022 combined. Average content is no longer scarce, it's practically infinite, and it's basically free. But because of that massive flood, authentic human taste, deep ethics, and proprietary, unscraped knowledge, those are becoming incredibly rare. Zabo likens this authentic human work to a handmade Rolls-Royce, because it's becoming so rare to find work that is purely human, distinctly unique, and highly insightful. Clients are soon going to be willing to pay an absolute premium for it.
Just looking at the timeline of how this all builds up, from 2022 to 2024, we've basically been in an era of absolute abundance. Totally mesmerized by AI's ability to just generate content on demand. But as we move through 2025 and 2026, we're going to see the decommoditization of human effort. As brands wake up and realize that AI just gives them the exact same average output as their competitors, they're going to start desperately seeking true differentiation. By 2027 and beyond, this scarcity will create a high premium value market. That surviving 40% of the industry we talked about, they won't just survive. They are going to thrive, charging premium rates for distinctly non-commodity, highly adaptable, purely human skills that algorithms simply cannot replicate.
Finally, Section 6, becoming anti-fragile. So how do you actually guarantee that you're part of that highly paid surviving 40%? You have to master the fundamental framework of problem solving. Zabo breaks it down into these 5 reductionist steps. Now, AI is getting incredibly good at step 3, devising a plan, and step 4, carrying out the execution. But AI is absolutely terrible at steps 1 and 2. It takes a real, living, breathing human being to step into a messy, real-world business environment, read between the lines, accurately identify the true problem, and understand its nuanced context. If you want to be anti-fragile, you must become a master at problem identification, not just task execution. And mastering problem identification really requires first principles thinking. I absolutely love this quote from Zabo. He points out that Kim Kardashian, the Kaiser Chiefs soccer team, and the Catholic Church all look completely different on the surface, right? But if you strip away all the noise and the identifying labels, they all rely on the exact same underlying business model. They are networks that monetize large followings. First principles thinking means stripping a problem all the way down to its bare bones. It is a deeply human skill that AI really struggles with, and it's an absolute necessity if you want to remain valuable and adaptable in any industry. Ultimately, your ability to adapt depends entirely on your mindset. Zabo reminds us of the famous story of Roger Bannister. For years, running a 4-minute mile was considered physically impossible by the collective consciousness of the world. But the exact day Bannister finally broke that barrier, suddenly, other runners started doing it too. The limit was never physical. It was an illusion. It was completely self-imposed in the mind. As we face the 60% collapse and the rise of AI, the only thing keeping you stuck in the commoditized average is your own belief system. You have the innate capability to unlearn, to adapt, and to claim your spot in the rare human premium. So, I'll leave you with this provocative question to think about today. What self-limiting belief is stopping you from reinventing yourself right now? Thanks so much for hanging out with me on this explainer, and I'll catch you in the next one.